Look, I'm here to introduce House Bill 5997, which would install an Office of Inspector General into the state of Rhode Island. And I just want to go over the preliminaries right off the top, give you an idea of what this bill does and how it works. The Office of Inspector General shall be an independent administrative agency charged with the purpose of preventing, detecting fraud, waste, abuse, and mismanagement in the expenditures of public funds, whether federal, state, or local, and relating to any state programs and operations. The investigations may also include the expenditures by non-governmental agencies of federal, state, and local funds. The IG would have direct and prompt access to heads of any public body when necessary for any purpose pertaining to the purpose of their duties and responsibilities. They would have the ability to subpoena witness and release material evidence. The office shall no later than April 1st of each year prepare a report summarizing the activities of the office for the prior calendar year. They may also prepare interim reports. These reports shall be forwarded to the necessary offices and shall be made available to the public. The office would be established by a majority vote of the governor, the general treasurer, and the attorney general. The inspector general would serve for a 5-year term with a 2-term limit. It would merge the Auditor General office into the Inspector General office to maintain it as a separate division. It would also place the Office of Internal Audits investigations at the discretion of the Inspector General. I feel that merging the office of the Inspector General with the Office of Auditor General, it would be putting the internal office under the discretion of the IG, gives the tools so the Inspector General could work with maximum efficiency. You know, I would also like to address the cost of this office, judging by what other states spend, and speaking with the President of the Inspector General Association and to the Inspector General of Mass, Jeffrey Shapiro, who's going to be testifying today. I believe it could be budgeted around $1.5 million. And that number takes into consideration the size of the state as well as the way the bill is drafted and the cost of the other departments that would be under their jurisdiction. You know, if we look at the governor's budget in 2026, the budget proposal includes a $1.2 million to initiate an Office of Program Integrity, which would include 6 new ETFs. It's essentially duplicating the implied responsibilities of the Inspector General. I would suggest that we use that budget appropriation for the Inspector General office, and this would broaden the scope of the abilities. I would also add that when the Office of Health and Human Services made their case for these appropriations, they validated their request by outlining a formula that would see a $6 million return in recovered funds. So imagine what an independent Inspector General could do if he could look into all government operations independently at their own discretion. You know, what would be the return to recovering funds? The IG office could pay for itself and its ability to recover funds with the actual tangible money it recovers and the preemptive assumed savings. You know, studies have shown at the federal government level, the IG gets an18 return on every dollar that's spent, and this is according to the Council on Inspector General's annual report. And another study by NASBO shows that states with an Inspector General spend $2,000 less per capita on average than states that don't include an Inspector General in Rhode Island. You know, Rhode Island stands about $3,000 above the average of per capita spending. I also want to mention, you know, as someone who served on the Finance Committee for 6 years, I see the comprehensive reports the Auditor General does and the Office of Internal Audit facilitates. It's very impressive. They do a great job. The component I think that is lacking with those agencies and those offices is their ability to work independently. They work at the discretion of the General Assembly and the executive branch of state government. When it comes to government oversight, I think it's safe to assume that the public would much rather have an independent government body overseeing the efficiencies of government operations. I would like to give one example of why I think this Inspector General could help us in just a most recent event. It says that, let me look at this. I believe it pertains to how the the Inspector General may have helped us when we had the Rhode Island Bridges FASCO. If you look at Rhode Island General Law 22-1310, it applies to the Auditor General's role in safeguarding computer systems. Page 16, it says, in conjunction with the powers and duties outlined in this chapter, the Auditor General may conduct reviews and assessments of various government computer systems and security systems, establishing a safeguard to these computer systems. In lieu of what happened to Rhode Island Bridges, it would be safe to say that I think if we have an independent general working independently, he could have preemptively identified the situation sooner, possibly saving us money. I mean, it's not a guarantee, but having someone roaming freely, looking into these situations. I would also like to mention one other thing. Let me see if I can find this. Well, I can't find the bill. I must have left it up there. Well, anyways, the Auditor General also looks into legislation. They will look into the legislation that we draft to see if there's inefficiencies in it. They did that in Massachusetts. There was a construction deal going on there, and there was a bill placed. The Auditor General looked into that, and they were able to weed out a lot of the deficiencies in that bill, which saved the state a lot of money. So they do look over legislation. And again, I think Inspector General Jeff Shapiro from Massachusetts will explore a little more on that. Now, the other thing I want to say, I want to conclude by saying, you know, as a General Assembly, our function is to pass legislation that reflects the general will of the public. You know, in a most recent poll conducted by Salve Regina University, it showed that Rhode Island voters overwhelmingly support Inspector General. 70% of Democrats and a larger majority of Republicans and independent voters are in favor of an Inspector General office, and that survey is in this article right here. So I think it would be very beneficial for the state. I've been putting this legislation now in for the last 6 years of my tenure. It's getting exhausting, so I really wish the committee would take a serious look at this and move it forward. And you'll hear other expert testimony going forward. Thanks.